The night was heavy with the scent of frozen earth and gasoline, the kind of cold that seeped into the bones of Willow Creek, Ohio. At 3:12 a.m., a single streetlight flickered on Maple Street, casting jagged shadows over a Victorian house that hadn't been painted since the Reagan era. From the basement, a faint scratching echoed a sound so delicate it could be mistaken for mice skittering behind the walls. But it wasn't mice. It was her, a woman, barely 26, scraping a dull spoon against concrete, her breath shallow, her fingers raw. For 20 years, she'd been a prisoner in her own home, hidden by the man who swore to protect her. This is the story of Ellie Harper, the girl the world forgot, locked away in a tomb beneath the floorboards. Ellie was 5 when her mother, Marianne Harper, met Roger Klein at a truck-stop diner off Interstate 71. Marianne was 32, her hands cracked from years of pouring coffee and scrubbing grease, her eyes tired but hopeful. Roger was a mechanic at a garage in nearby Mansfield, a burly man with a crooked smile and a Bible quote for every occasion. To the folks of Willow Creek, he was a godsend, a steady man who'd take care of Marianne and her quiet, dark-haired daughter. They married in a small ceremony at the First Baptist Church in 2004, when Ellie was 6. The town sent flowers, and Marianne believed she'd finally found a partner to share her burdens. But Roger's warmth was a mask. At home, his voice turned sharp, his hands heavy. He didn't like Ellie's questions, her giggles, the way her crayons littered the kitchen table. "Kids need discipline," he'd say, his eyes narrowing. Marianne, worn down by years of single motherhood, nodded along, convincing herself Roger's rules were for Ellie's good. By the time Ellie was 7, Roger had built a quiet room in the basement, a 10 by 12-foot cell with cinder block walls, a steel door, and soundproofing foam he'd bought cheap from a construction site. He told Marianne it was a place for Ellie to think about her behavior. She didn't see the padlock he hid behind a shelf of canned goods, or the chain he bolted to the floor. The night Ellie was first locked in, she was 7.5. She'd spilled milk on Roger's newspaper, and his face had gone red, veins bulging at his temples. He dragged her downstairs, her small hands clutching at his sleeve, her screams echoing in the stairwell. The steel door slammed shut, and Ellie pounded on it until her fists bruised. Upstairs, Roger told Marianne that Ellie had run away, probably to her no-good father in Akron. Marianne, frantic, called the police, but Roger's story held. Ellie was a troubled kid, prone to tantrums, likely gone for good. The Willow Creek PD searched for 3 weeks, stapling missing posters to every lamppost from Mansfield to Cleveland. Ellie Harper, age 7, brown hair, blue eyes, last seen in a red sweater. The posters faded, the search waned, and Ellie became a memory. But she was alive, 10 feet below her mother's bedroom, her cries swallowed by the soundproofed walls. For 20 years, Roger kept her there. The basement was a concrete crypt, lit by a single 40-watt bulb that buzzed like a dying insect. The air was damp, thick with mildew, and the faint metallic tang of rust. Roger brought food once a day and chili, day-old bread, sometimes a can of peaches if he was feeling generous. He gave her a bucket for a toilet, a thin cot with a stained mattress, and a pile of old clothes, his old flannels, Marianne's stretched-out sweaters. He chained her ankle to a steel ring in the floor, the chain just long enough to reach the cot and the bucket, but not the door. "You're safe here," he'd say, his voice low, his breath sour with cheap bourbon. "The world's no place for you." Ellie's days blurred into years. She marked time with a rusted spoon, stolen from a bowl of soup when Roger wasn't looking. She scratched tally marks into the wall, one for each day, until the concrete was a jagged calendar of her captivity. She was 9 when she stopped screaming. Her throat was too raw, her hope too thin. She learned to move quietly, to avoid the creak of the cot, to flinch without sound when Roger's boots thudded down the stairs. He brought her books, dog-eared Bible stories, a Chilton's auto repair manual, a waterlogged copy of Little Women. She read them under the dim bulb, tracing words with her fingers, building worlds in her mind where she wasn't chained, where the sky wasn't a memory. Marianne died when Ellie was 12, collapsing at the diner during a late shift. The coroner called it a heart attack. But Ellie heard the truth through the floorboards. Roger's voice, sharp and cruel. The sound of a glass breaking, then silence. Marianne's death left Roger unchecked. He quit his job, lived off her life insurance, and turned the house into a fortress. He boarded up the windows, let the lawn grow wild, and told neighbors he was grieving. No one questioned the pad. Lock on the basement door or the bulk groceries. He hauled in cans of Spam, bags of rice, enough to feed a family no one knew he had. Ellie grew up in shadows. Her body stretched tall but stayed frail, her skin pale as the underbelly of a fish. Her hair, once a soft brown, hung in matted clumps, cut with a dull knife Roger gave her when she was 15. Her eyes, bright blue at 6, faded to a gray that mirrored the concrete. She learned to survive Roger's visits, which came at night, unpredictable and heavy with menace. He'd sit on the cot, his weight sinking the springs, and talk about family, about how she owed him her life. Ellie learned to stare at the floor, to make her mind a blank wall to endure. She whispered stories to herself when he left, tales of a girl who climbed out of the dark, who ran through fields under a sky she hadn't seen since 2004. By her teens, Ellie's hope was a fragile thing, but it didn't die. She stole a nail from Roger's toolbox when he passed out drunk on the basement stairs, hiding it under her tongue until he left. For years, she worked it against the chain's weakest link, her fingers bleeding, her nails splitting. She didn't know the world outside had changed. Smartphones, Netflix, Amber Alerts replacing milk carton photos. She didn't know Willow Creek had grown, that the diner was now a Chipotle, that her missing posters were long gone, buried in a landfill with the town's trash. Roger's control grew sloppier with age. He drank more, forgot to lock the toolbox, left a screwdriver on the stairs once. Ellie hid it under her mattress, her heart pounding at the thought of what she could do with it. She started planning, mapping the basement in her mind, counting the steps to the door. 15. If she stretched the chain to its limit, she practiced moving silently, her bare feet cold on the concrete, her body coiled like a spring. She didn't know if she'd ever escape, but she refused to die there, forgotten. In January 2025, Roger stopped coming. Ellie waited, her stomach cramping with hunger, the bulb flickering out for good. Darkness swallowed the basement, and for the first time in years, she felt terror not of Roger, but of being left to rot. She worked the nail against the chain, her hands shaking, until it snapped with a dull clink. She froze, expecting his boots, but there was only silence. She crawled to the door, the screwdriver in her hand, and pried at the lock, her arms weak but desperate. It didn't budge. On February 3, 2025, the silence broke. Sirens wailed outside, red and blue lights flashing through the basement's high, cracked window. Voices shouted upstairs, boots stomping, a crash as the front door splintered. Police. Clear, flashlights pierced the dark as officers tore down the false wall, revealing the steel door. Ellie Harper, a woman's voice called, sharp with urgency. Ellie, curled on the cot, couldn't answer. Her voice was gone, her body trembling. The door groaned open, and light flooded in, blinding her. Detective Sarah Ruiz, a 32-year-old with the Cleveland PD, knelt beside her. "You're safe now, Ellie," she said, her voice breaking. Ellie didn't move, didn't trust the words. Sarah wrapped a blanket around her, guiding her up the stairs into a world she didn't recognize. Upstairs, Roger lay dead on the kitchen floor, a stroke felling him mid-sip of Jim Beam. Neighbors had called 911 after weeks of silence, the mailbox stuffed with unpaid bills, the house reeking of decay. Ellie's rescue was a media storm. The girl beneath Maple Street, the New York Times called her. News vans parked on the lawn, reporters interviewing stunned neighbors who'd barbecued with Roger, who'd waved at him mowing the lawn. True crime shows dug into his past, a sealed assault charge from 1998, a string of dues, a childhood in foster care marked by violence. Ellie didn't see the headlines. She was in a Cleveland hospital, hooked to IVs, her body malnourished, her mind a maze of trauma. Sunlight burned her eyes, voices overwhelmed her, a nurse's touch made her flinch. Sarah Ruiz became her anchor. She visited daily, bringing small comforts, a soft sweatshirt, a notebook, a photo of the Ohio River at dusk. She told Ellie about the world iPhones, TikTok, the Browns' endless losing streak. Ellie listened, her hands clutching the notebook, her eyes fixed on the window. She spoke for the first time on day 17, her voice a rasp. "Does the sky still have clouds?" Sarah smiled, tears falling. "All kinds, Ellie. Big, fluffy ones. You'll see them soon." Recovery was a battle. Ellie's body healed slowly, vitamin deficiencies, muscle atrophy, a heart murmur from years of stress. Her mind was harder. Therapists worked with her, teaching her to eat without fear of starvation, to walk without expecting a chain to yank her back. She had nightmares of the basement, of Roger's boots, of the spoon in her hand. She woke screaming, her roommates in the group home holding her until she calmed. She learned to write her name, the letters wobbly but proud. She learned to trust Sarah, who never pushed, never judged. Willow Creek couldn't face itself. Neighbors who'd called Roger a good guy avoided each other's eyes. The town council debated tearing down the house, but settled on a plaque by the library, in memory of Ellie Harper's resilience. Ellie never saw it. She moved to a group home in Columbus, where she could rebuild away from the cameras. She started gardening, her hands in the dirt, feeling the sun's warmth for the first time since she was a child. She planted lavender for her mother, marigolds for herself. Each bloom was a small rebellion, a claim on a life stolen. Ellie's story isn't a fairy tale. It's a scar carried by a woman who survived a monster. She doesn't trust easily, doesn't smile often. But she walks outside now, feels the grass under her feet, watches clouds drift across a sky she's learning to love. She keeps the notebook Sarah gave her, filling it with words, stories, memories, truths. On the first page, she wrote, "My name is Ellie Harper. I am here," and in the quiet of her new life, she's starting to believe it.